afternoon. Welcome everyone to the German Marshall Fund of the United States on Friday. So hopefully we're not the last thing before you on the weekend. Thank you very much for joining us, whether you are with us in the room here in Washington, D.C. office of the German Marshall Fund, or you're following our 2023 Freedom Lecture online from around the world. My name is Martina Hrvolova, and I'm the chairperson of Friends of Slovakia, but at the same time, I'm also Senior Development Manager at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Today's Freedom Lecture is part of a series organized by Friends of Slovakia, the Embassy of the Slovak Republic, American Friends of the Czech Republic, and the Czech Embassy to the United States since 2000, on the eve of or on the day of November 17 to celebrate the anniversary of the Velvet Revolution. The series invite accomplished individuals to speak about the issues pertaining to democracy, not only in Central Europe, as you will hear from our guest speaker today. We'll be talking about the United States too, I believe. This year, our guest lecturer is Mr. Rasto Kuzel, Executive Director of MEMO 98, organization, media organization and election monitoring company from Slovakia, and I will get to introduce him a bit later. But a few housekeeping remarks before I get to that point. So today's lecture is going to run through 1 p.m. We will have to end on time to accommodate our online audience. Our online audience is invited to submit their questions through Q&A function. We have a colleague in the room who will be collecting your questions for the speaker. Guests in the room are welcome to ask questions during the Q&A using the mics on the tables. Following the opening remarks by our guest lecturer, we will have Jan Suročák, who is a founding member, board member of Friends of Slovakia, and also senior director at the International Republican Institute to moderate the conversation with our guest speaker. And again, their exchange will be followed by the questions from the audience. I also would like to recognize the presence of both ambassadors of Slovakia, Mr. Radovan Javorčík, and ambassador of the Czech Republic to the United States, Mr. Miloslav Stašek. Welcome, thank you very much. Same goes for the chairman of American Friends of the Czech Republic, Tom Dine, who will have the opportunity to provide their brief remarks all the way at the end of the lecture. With that, if you allow me, I'd like to move on to introducing our guest speaker, Mr. Rasto Kuzel. I'll start by saying that we're personal friends. I know him for almost 20 years. He's the one who sparked interest in election issues in me when I was a young foreign service official of Slovakia before moving to the United States. Thank you so much. The list of his accomplishments is too long to go over, so I will just say that he's the executive director of MEMO 98 since 1998. As I said, it's a prominent institution based in Slovakia with extensive experience in media monitoring and technical assistance to civil society. Rasto personally has worked as a media and election analyst, consultant and trainer, participating in tens of OSCE election observation missions, but he has also worked on nearly 200 other election and media-related projects within the framework of the United Nations, Council of Europe, OSCE, National Endowment for Democracy, among others. For the past few years, Rasto has focused also on propaganda and disinformation, including as part of the Digital Disinformation Forum at the Stanford University. Please join me in welcoming Rasto to the German Marshall Fund, and specifically also the Transatlantic Democracy Working Group platform, which is a co-host of this year's lecture. Thank you very much to the Open Society Foundations for your support. With that, please join me in welcoming Rasto to the podium, and I'm going to hand the floor over to him.
Well, thank you very much, Martina, for this very nice welcoming words. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real honor for me to be here today to share with you my thoughts on the importance of free and fair elections for democracies. I'm very grateful to Friends of Slovakia, the American Friends of the Czech Republic, the Czech and Slovak Embassies, for giving me this opportunity to join a long list of distinguished speakers going all the way back to November 2000. I'm also very grateful to German Marshall Fund of the United States for hosting this year's event at their premises. The previous speakers have all made very important contributions to democratic legacy of our three countries. And while the topics of their speeches differed, there was one overarching theme: the importance of our transatlantic partnership. In today's world, we face several unprecedented challenges, ranging from health pandemics and the return of a full-scale war in Europe to terror attacks, foreign interventions in elections, and natural disasters. The growing inequality and poverty make some people question the fairness of our democracies, and the foundations on which they are built have been shaken. The level of trust towards institutions is low and continue to decline. This is why we must return to our strong roots to withstand these negative tendencies. Today, more than ever, we realize the importance of our transatlantic partnership. Let me start my speech by paying tribute to one person who is not on the list of previous speakers, but is certainly very deep in our hearts. I'm talking of Mr. Karel Schwarzenberg, the former foreign minister of Czech Republic. He unfortunately passed away a few days ago, but will always remain in our memories as a true champion of human rights and democracy. In an interview on the 30th anniversary of the Velvet Revolution, he praised Slovak civil society, stating, quote, "I have always admired the fact that Slovaks overthrew Vladimir Mečiar in normal elections and were able to elect good presidents 2 times in a row. And most recently, they stood up against a virtually omnipotent prime minister. Both he and his interim minister had to resign." In the meantime, as you already know, we in Slovakia like to make simple things as complicated as possible. Not to talk about democracy, which is by default not very simple. Since 1992, my country has endured periods of violations and restorations of the liberal democratic system. About a month before our most recent parliamentary elections, a good friend of mine and yours, former Slovak ambassador to the United States, Martin Butora, wrote an editorial entitled, "Let's Not Run Away." He correctly predicted that when it comes to our democratic trajectory, we would once again experience going down the hill, but at the same time offered a vision that some institutions, media, and NGOs would be able to resist the attempts for the urbanization of Slovakia. Many of the challenges that we experienced during our recent elections are of a global nature. Let me try to unpack some of them and offer my vision on how to tackle them, both globally and in the framework of our region. It is a global trend that many countries have been gradually using new information and communication technologies in our elections. While they promise new ways of voting, they also bring dangers as artificial intelligence and cyber tools expand the scope for disinformation and manipulation before elections. While AI contributes to the automation of data analysis and has the potential to improve and support the upholding of democratic values and processes, including elections, its application in social media can contribute to social polarization, resulting in the formation of separate groups that no longer understand each other and find themselves increasingly in conflict with one another. AI can also have significant gendered implications, including, among others, gender-based exclusion, algorithmic bias and discrimination, the reinforcement of gender stereotypes, and the objectification of women. The use of AI can affect minorities in similar ways, causing discrimination based on ethnic or social origin, religious convictions, age, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other characteristics. I strongly believe that understanding this dynamic is fundamental to safeguarding the integrity and credibility of our electoral processes. In May this year, I participated in a conference organized by the Council of Europe entitled Elections in the Time of Crisis, where we discussed such challenges. But one of my main takeaways was related to foreign interference in elections, specifically how certain bad actors who systematically meddle in our elections integrated various forms of foreign interference into their foreign policies. Just think about how it is relatively easy and cheap to become, or it has become, to meddle in someone else's elections, and how much is at stake. One election can change the geopolitical orientation of a country. The main goal of such interference is to fuel polarization and disseminate harmful content, more precisely disinformation, misinformation, hate speech, fake news, and deepfakes, which cast doubt about the integrity of the vote and blur the lines between reality and fiction. No country is fully immune to such foreign interference, as you experienced here in 2016. But my country is particularly vulnerable. In the past 10 years, it has experienced recurring bouts of populism, high-level corruption scandals, declining trust in democracy, and growing illiberalism and extremism. The erratic performance of the Olano-led governments, characterized by chaos and political instability, further undermined public trust in democratic institutions. Talking of trust, let me give you one very concrete example. In 2002, according to World's Value Survey, as many as 59% of people in Slovakia trusted the integrity of our elections. In February this year, an extremist party leader featured a video hinting that the September elections could be manipulated. The video was widely disseminated on Facebook and YouTube. And by April, more than 50% of Slovaks feared that the elections would be manipulated. So this tells you how the role of social media and disinformation is impacting population in my country. The current perception of democracy as a superior political system in Slovakia is below 50% and is tied to both personal economic conditions and the poor performance of the previous governments. As a result, many dissatisfied citizens were much more open to disinformation and populism, leading to radical swings in political preferences and stability, areas cynically exploited by radical groupings, but also more traditional parties. This largely contributed to the outcome of our recent elections that saw illiberal and populist forces openly articulating pro-Russian, anti-democratic, anti-Western narratives coming to power. The incumbent ruling coalition has used social media to spread disinformation, which helped them to win the elections. Even after taking their government seats, the ruling coalition leaders have continued their open animosity or ignorance of the free independent media and have used social media platforms and other friendly outlets to communicate primarily with their voters. Like in Hungary or Poland, they will attempt to influence traditional media and will take over the public broadcaster. They also want to cut the funding of NGOs and label those who receive funding from abroad as foreign agents. But I didn't come here to complain or bring only bad news, as I'm sure that you have enough of those on your own with the upcoming elections. As mentioned earlier, I would also like to share some positive developments and potential solutions to some of these challenges. For me, the fact that both people in Poland and Slovakia came to recent elections in large numbers is very good news. I was particularly pleased to see how many young voters came to vote. The participation of the first and second time voters was 69% in Slovakia and 70% in Poland. This is good news, as the main aim of disinformation is to create passive and cynical societies. Thanks to our former Prime Minister Mečiar, we have a robust civil society in Slovakia that has been a bulwark against democratic backsliding in the past. We were able to demonstrate it already in 1998 when Mr. Mečiar attempted to derail our pro-European and transatlantic orientation, for which we were famously called a black hole of Europe by distinguished Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. My organization, MEMO 98, is a product of this period, and we still keep 98 in our title. When I think of our story, I think of the transatlantic partnership I mentioned at the beginning. If it were not for NDI, IRI, NED, or USAID back in 1998, I would not be here today. Their support was crucial at the beginning of our existence. And what we learned from them during those years was not wasted. We understand the importance of free and fair elections. And to date, we have worked, as Martina presented, in some 60 countries, sharing our experience in fulfilling our mission, which is expressed in our slogan, ensure that all citizens have access to comprehensive information. Many such NGOs exist in Slovakia, the Czech Republic, Poland, and Hungary. What we learn, we share with others. But the actors on the other side understand this as well, which is why they don't like us. They don't like active citizens or free and open societies, as it challenges the way they govern. How far this can go is visible in today's Russia. Let me conclude by saying that I'm convinced that people's activism will prevail and we will overcome this difficult period. But we need to be united in our partnership. We need help from our US partners and friends to win our own battles so we can continue supporting Ukraine, which clearly refused the vision of an unfree society and has made such a huge sacrifice in fighting for our freedom. Thank you very much.
Dobrý den. Dobrý den. Just to make sure we've got both bases covered. Welcome. Thanks to everybody for coming. I'll just start off, if I can, with a quick question, and which I'll actually take from questions that were submitted in advance by email, and then we'll open up to folks here in the room. When you do take the mic, please just identify yourself. Let us know who you are and what you do. And we've got almost exactly 25 minutes. Which is a pretty good Q&A period in Washington. Rasto, I have to say that I didn't ever think I would hear you thank Vladimir Mečiar from a podium in front of an audience. But I'm glad you did, because you're absolutely right. And I'm taken back to 1998 when we first met, and that era. And I'm very happy that you ended your opening with a focus on elections and the processes that go along with elections. 1998 was a very different world. When we think about technology, when we think about how communications have evolved. And the question I want to pose is based on that. For those of us who are in the area of supporting democratic processes, you know, in the old days, we always used to talk about free and fair elections. That was the sort of standard, right? We've collectively moved away from that because it can be abused in all sorts of ways. Right. But I'd like to kind of go back to that idea and ask you, what does free and fair mean now? When we look at the implications that you described for electoral processes of AI, of foreign interference, all the other challenges that we have to deal with now, what does free and fair mean?
Excellent question.
It wasn't mine. Somebody submitted it.
It's the most difficult out of the four. So thank you for asking it. No, indeed. I mean, it's a completely different world. I mean, we can see like how much social media have actually intruded our lives. I mean, this is really like the numbers are really, on one hand, I would say frightening. On the other hand, of course, I look at AI and social media always. You know, I try to be open, and as any technology, it can be used for good, purposes and for bad purposes. But it's a very relevant question, like how much we need to change, the rules, how much we need to change the international standards. And I think this is where the expert community is facing these biggest challenges. That actually we have to really look at this as it is evolving. It's a moving target. We try to see what makes sense. Try to see. I mean, it is also important to say that MEMO is known for its media monitoring methodology, which we are very proud of. As I said, I mean, it sort of originated here in Columbia University, United States. We took it to Slovakia. Basically worked on it, and now we are delivering it around the world. But we are not very happy with our social media monitoring methodology, which is because it can never be so comprehensive. Because again, we don't have the legal framework, we don't have the standards, we don't have the experiences. So, but just to more precisely answer, I think by now we understand that we cannot ignore this phenomenon. I mean, we have to include it into our assessment. I think by now we more or less know what are the criteria which we need to consider. We need to definitely push the big social media platforms to operate because that's not really what we have seen. I'm convinced that we need good regulations because these commercial companies are not willing to sort of accept the sort of impact that they have on information that is consumed by voters. So there are many things. I mean, I will finish, and sorry for the long response, but you said we have enough time. But I think it's the realization it's such a complex issue involving so many different actors. I mean, I've never in my life met so many different people dealing with the issue of AI and disinformation, ranging from politicians, from experts, academia, but also, I don't know, police, Ministry of Interior, this type of institutions. So yeah, I mean, I'll stop there.
So let me do just a real quick follow-up, and then anybody who would like to ask a question, just put your hand up and let me know here in the room. So what does that mean for managing processes, right? Again, you look back to when times were simpler and the election commission in a given country would sort of have management authority for making an election happen on a given day, right? That is clearly no longer sufficient to address the kind of challenges that we're facing, right? So how does a government even consider how to make sure that all of the elements are being addressed in preparing for an election?
Well, it's really, as you said, I mean, there is such a technology disconnect on the side of many EMBs around the world, and I will be presenting my research next week in the Council of Europe. I researched 31 countries specifically for how they are dealing with these ICTs. How to what extent they are actually thinking about introducing this. And one of the main findings of this research is that countries realize that this is probably not a good period to rush. One of the main things I mentioned is the lack of trust. I think we really need to go back to the roots. I mean, including in our elections, because what advantage do we have by introducing, for example, internet voting, if 60% of the population will not trust the results? Yeah, so we need to. I think we need to really we shouldn't rush. Unfortunately, what we see with some countries with more authoritarian tendencies is that this is very easy how to manipulate elections. So I think we have to take those into consideration. But I would bring Slovakia as a good example of how this multi-stakeholder cooperation between different agencies actually really worked in in the most recent elections. I'm talking about Ministry of Interior, talking about our election management body, talking about police. So we had there was a deep fake video which was circulated during the moratorium, and the police and the Ministry of Interior really did excellent job by tracking down from which Telegram account it came, how it spread through Facebook. So we escalated with Meta. I was involved. They slowed down the traffic by 80%. You can ask, is this enough? Probably not, but that's Meta. So I think this could be one way how to tackle these issues.
Very interesting. Thank you. Questions in the room? Or from those of you who may be online, just write and we will capture that and pose the question. Rasto, let me go in a slightly different direction. This is the Czech and Slovak Freedom Lecture, right? We haven't talked much today about the Czech Republic, right? In part because elections have been more recent in Slovakia and Poland, right? But I wonder if you could maybe just do a little sort of comparison for us. We all know that both countries have taken different evolutionary paths, and I really appreciated the reference to Schwarzenberg. Thank you. And you know, at various times it appears that one system has strengths and the other system has weaknesses, and then it flips around. So I wonder if, you know, given your history, if you could take a look at it over time and sort of give us an analysis of where we think both countries stand now relative to each other on these questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we really, and this is, by the way, as I mentioned in my speech, I mean, I believe that we should be really looking at each other experiences, and I think the Czech Republic really offers a lot of such experiences, and we were very much looking at the presidential election, and we were very happy to actually implement a project of a voting advice application, which actually came from the Czech Republic. And so we have very good cooperation. But like you probably asked more about those more general sort of issues. And I think what we really see is that despite the fact that, for example, in the Czech elections, I was able to see very similar narratives about the war in Ukraine, you know, the type of working with fear. You know, like fear is something that mobilizes people, but it's not a good mobilization, in my view. And so we obviously we don't use fear in our mobilization campaigns, but it is indeed something which was used in the Czech Republic. And the difference is that the public, I think, has really built a little bit more resilience towards this type of, you know, disinformation narratives. So if and that doesn't mean that there are not such people. I mean, there are also in the Czech Republic, but they really were not so much mobilized, so to say, or they were able to actually see the reasons behind that type of using of narratives. Whereas in Slovakia, you know, like all the Globsec trends show that we are much more vulnerable to these type of disinformation narratives. People really feared that whatever these actors were using, you know, in the campaign, that could really impact their lives. And the irony is that again, like economically, you know, we are not doing so bad, you know, like there were definitely worse periods. So, you know, and this is where we have a problem, and it's not a problem that you can fix in a short term. I mean, this is something which deals with digital media literacy. It deals with you know, people basically really understanding, you know, like to what extent this can be really abused. I mean, these new technologies. So yeah, I think that's one difference, and maybe one to mention, because that was also included in the questions that we received, which is the electoral system. And here, I think I'm really concerned about the discussion now, post-election in Slovakia. We have a proportional system, which means, and it's a one district proportional system. So it means that, you know, political parties are forced to create coalitions. And so, and I would like to keep it this way, to be frank, because when I look at Hungary, for example, there's a different system. It's a majoritarian system, and it helps strong parties to actually cement to power. Yeah. So in the Czech Republic, they also have like a bicameral parliament, which I think is another good way to sort of prevent one party from being too dominant. Right. Yeah. So maybe these two things to mention.
Good. Thanks. Question over here.
There should be a microphone. Oh. Thanks very much. All right. Thanks very much for your remarks. I'm David Salvo, along with Rachel here. We co-direct the Alliance for Securing Democracy here at GMF. You mentioned that government actors are vigilant in sort of unmasking disinformation and getting that information out to the public at the same time while public distrust in government institutions and actors is rising, which is not a problem that's unique to Slovakia. Of course, it's a problem in many European countries and the United States. You also mentioned that Slovakia has a vibrant civil society. So I feel like we're always sort of putting a lot of pressure on government to be the messengers to try to convince the public that there are nefarious actors who are trying to undermine confidence in elections. But in countries like Slovakia, which has such a vibrant civil society, what role are civil society actors playing? Do they have enough resources? Are there trusted messengers in your country that can sort of do the government's bidding in a way to be able to build confidence and build resilience among Slovaks to trust that elections are held freely and fairly, and that government is actually a responsible player in trying to unearth and unmask foreign efforts to undermine that confidence? Thanks.
Excellent question. Thank you very much. I mean, it's sort of, and I will answer in sort of two ways. I mean, let me comment first of all on where I see the biggest problem when it comes to the lack of trust. I mean, apart from what I mentioned, I don't want to repeat myself, but other institutions simply do not really work on their identities. The identity of a ministry usually is represented by a minister. Yeah, and I think we need to put more effort, to create identities for all these institutions, because in some countries it doesn't really matter. I mean, if the minister is from this party or that party, because there is a certain identity and there are certain lines, that you will not cross. So that's one thing which goes more to the institutions. When it comes to the NGOs, and again, thanks for asking that question, because as we speak, the Slovak civil society has really experienced now, an attack, I would even call it, because something which has really worked very well for 20 years, which is the ability to donate 2% out of your income, regardless if you're a physical or judicial person, this is really endangered now by the incumbent ruling coalition. And you could argue, okay, it's about 43 million that the third sector gets in these 2%. Maybe it doesn't look like such a big money, but it is huge money when you look at the way how it has been done for 20 years. There is this fantastic relationship between individuals that would donate money, to these small NGOs in particular. I mean, the aim is to go after what they call political NGOs, and I don't know what is a political NGO. I mean, I never saw a definition, and that's not going to be achieved. But what would be achieved, unfortunately, on the other hand, is that small NGOs that are actually working very well in these local communities will be affected. Probably they will not die. But they will not be able to do their work as before. And this is, I think, what is extremely concerning for us. And that's why, we are really sort of coming here and really thinking like how we can sort of defend our democracy, because I think the role of NGOs is really to supplement where state is not working properly. And, there are so many areas where our state, I mean, just give you one example. We spoke about Ukraine. Well, the moment when we had this influx of Ukrainian refugees on the border, if it were not for Slovak NGOs that went there and really supported the state would not really do the job as expected. Yeah. So we really need civil society, particularly on the issue of disinformation. I think this is a huge contribution that civil society can give. I believe that in any country, it is a multi-stakeholder issue, which you will not be able to solve by state on its own. So we need this combination, and that's what we have tried to do. Even for these upcoming, for the last elections, I mean, we tried to put together these people from different branches, from civil society, from academia, from state together, and I think together, we could be much stronger.
Thanks. We'll go over here for a quick question, and then we'll go online. Should be a mic right there.
My name is Martina Hrvolova, and okay. My name is Teresa Meršinova, and I work for an executive search company for government contracting. I know that's a little random, but very interesting talk. You mentioned that the turnout of first-time and second-time voters was very prominent this election, and I was just wondering what your thoughts were as to why that was, and whether or not you think that trend will continue in the upcoming elections, upcoming years.
Thank you. I mean, this is really where, again, like I see such a huge importance that we don't lose young people. And this is why we have really put together this coalition. There was a campaign called Chcem tu zostať, I want to stay here, which was initiated by 4 organizations, but the Open Society Foundation was playing the most prominent role. And I have to say that, okay, so what we did, we looked at the public opinion polls, and we saw that young people were really getting disillusioned. In April, only 51% was ready to go and vote in the election. So what we tried to do, we tried to analyze, like, what are the issues that they care about? And if you would expect that this is climate change or education, you would be surprised. Actually, it was more economic issues. So this showed us to what extent they're actually influenced by their parents, who basically had the same issues. And so we tried to really do a campaign, which was a Get Out and Vote campaign, especially like showing them that, by participating in elections, they could change things, that not all politicians are the same. You should really take your effort. You should read, these programs. And I believe that at the end of the day, it worked. It was not only our campaign. There were many other very good campaigns, but civil society really was mobilized and really showed to these young people that, you should not leave the country. I mean, you should really stay and you should participate. So I think that was what worked in our case. In Poland, I think there were different reasons for this, but generally I believe that engaging young people in Poland, it was also engaging women, and then I think is also very relevant for Slovakia, for other countries. So I do believe that this type of campaigns should definitely be there. Because again, as I said in my speech, the aim of the disinformation is to kill this activism, and I believe that people need to be active, and if we can keep young people, this is young people are always the real engine of any society, and that's what was behind our thinking.
Right. Thanks. We'll go online and then Tureka.
Hi, yes. So we have a question from the audience, so on the online audience. So we have many countries that have built out special voting arrangements, methods of voting other than in person on election day, particularly since the pandemic. So are there special voting arrangements such as more in-person early voting that could help mitigate election interference efforts, like the AI election episode that you referenced during the quiet period before Slovakia's election? Or would introducing more special voting arrangements make matters worse with regarding to potentially countering AI election interference efforts?
Mhm. Excellent question. And again, like, I'm not against introducing these new technologies. I think this is it's a train that has already left the station, and we will not do any good if we try to say that we don't want any of these because it's a problem to introduce these things. So what I'm saying is basically there is definitely a list of important criteria which need to be considered. I mean, this should be such a cross-societal question. Again, look at Estonia is the only country where internet voting is used by more than 50% of population. And it's quite a complex system. And you can vote many times, and then it's the last vote that is counted. And you can, at the end of the day, you can decide you voted by internet, but then you come in person, and then it's the last vote which counts, which is really like very complex. And I cannot imagine that we would try to do it in Slovakia these days, or imagine in the United States. But what is different is that people trust that system, even though there are some questions now I heard in Estonia, but that's crucial. So like whatever we implement, it needs to be tested as it is done in Switzerland. In the Netherlands, I worked there. They stopped using internet voting in 2010. They thought it was too risky. In 2017, they actually disconnected even the electronic count of votes because there was an ethical hacker who hacked into the system. And that's another area which is more like, one thing is like, and I will use the example of deepfakes. I mean, for me, it's not the problem that we have deepfakes, because I think we will have software which will be able to detect. It's actually how much, the reality is becoming fiction and the other way around. So, for example, Prime Minister, there is an investigation journalism, good piece, showing that this guy or lady or whoever is involved in corruption, showing a video, this guy is giving some money to someone or the other way around. But then this person can say, well, no, this is a deep fake, I never was there. And so this is, I think, the challenge, at least that I see, that again, like how can we ensure that people actually understand and can see the difference between fiction and reality.
Cool. Veiko, we'll go to you next, and then I'll take the liberty of asking a final real short question.
Thank you. And thank you for the excellent presentation as well. It was fascinating to listen to this. And I very much appreciate Veiko Samarkini, non-resident senior fellow in the National Republican Institute. My question is, I'm very intrigued, this idea of the youth presenting at such large numbers. And I think it gives us hope, to see that there is an interest in the political system in getting engaged. My question is, can you highlight a little bit their priorities? Not you indicated a little bit the issues that they are more or less after, but in terms of political preferences, in both the case of Poland and in the case of Slovakia, were their votes significant in the electoral outcome? So in a way, were they kind of satisfied in saying, okay, yes, we could make a difference, or were they kind of walking away frustrated and saying, no, we didn't make a? So I think that on one hand, on the other hand, the same question about women votes. How do you see they evaluating their kind of impact on the electoral outcome, or if you have any insight on their voting preferences?
Sure. Well, first of all, this is exactly what we are trying not to get into. We are trying to really mobilize young people regardless of who they are going to vote for. So that's the crucial point, that our activities are not there to support one or another party. So we clearly, when we try to mobilize, we basically explain to them like how important this participation is. And the fact that, and this is where, for example, we offer this voting advice application, which is specifically for first and second time voters, 25 questions, that we based on these surveys, trying to see what they cared about, and then how much this is actually reflected in the political programs of the parties. Yeah. So for us, that is the important thing, regardless, you can choose who you want to vote for, but please don't be passive citizen. Don't decide not to come and vote. So I think this is, I want to really highlight that in all these activities, we are not, this is for the parties. They have access to the same surveys. They could commission surveys, and it's up to them, to persuade young voters, old voters, whatever. So that's not what we want to sort of meddle in. This is not our area. And with women, it's really the same. I think we really need to encourage, as high participation as possible, and it should be across the society. It should not exclude anyone, be it women, be it handicapped or whoever. So I think, and I think when you look at Slovakia, for example, I think we really owe still a lot to women. The participation is not really representative in my view, and our experience with women in high positions, like the incumbent president or the former prime minister, Ms. Radičová, shows that there is a lot of quality there. So I think this is what motivates me, for example, when I'm mobilizing.
So as if scripted, you have now taken me to the question that I wanted to ask. And we'll wind up with a question that's focused on the future, and that is, there will famously be a presidential election in Slovakia next year. Say something, if you could, about how you're thinking forward to that and how you'll be working on that and what might come of it.
Yes, and I really believe that it is important that related to your previous question, like which I also sense that you wanted to see whether young people are now disappointed with the outcome and may decide to leave, Slovakia. And I hope that that it is not really just about one election. Yeah, that the life goes on. We will have certain challenges, but I'm not skeptical about this. I'm a natural optimist. So no, I believe that we need to continue. And so for the presidential election and for the EP elections, we are really trying to see, like, to what extent we could really utilize the joint experience, that we learned from the Polish elections, from the Czech elections, from Hungary. So like, I think the region really would benefit if, these type of projects are sort of shared, because it's, I think, in our common interest that the region really stays to be a strong partner in this transatlantic partnership. And I think we benefit from each other. And I think civil society, media could really contribute to this. So yeah, we are really full of plans. Some of those I shared at some of my meetings here, but primarily, again, I think we would like to provide this information to the electorate. We would like to monitor if there are any attempts to disinform people about, I don't know, elections being manipulated or the possible election interference, from outside or from inside. So I think that's important for the integrity. And the mobilization is the second part of these activities, which again, I think we would like to see. I think the more people come, for me, it's always a good sign.
Yep.
It's the better representation, for those who are elected.
Great. Rasto, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great job. Thanks. So we at Friends of Slovakia and American Friends of the Czech Republic could not do what we do without our relationships with the respective embassies. So if I could ask both ambassadors maybe to come forward now. I think maybe Ambassador Javorčík first.
Thank you very much. Thank you, GMF and Martina, for your leadership, the American Friends of Czech Republic, the Czech colleagues at the embassies. Thank you, Mr. Kuzel, for crossing the channel, not the channel, the Atlantic. The channel is different. I think whoever ordered the food, undeniably good. It's perfect because this was undeniably good debate and lecture, as are all the Czechoslovak freedom lectures. Let me say a few things related to the elections, and then perhaps a little bit widely. There are several good news about the elections, and you said them. Pretty high turnout. The Liberal Party had one of the best results in Europe. 17% is for a single Liberal Party. It's good. Social Democrats, if you combine the two, it's 35% for Social Democrats. Again, good result. 75,000 Slovaks voting from abroad. And now I have to thank my colleagues at the embassy and everybody else. We were really saying, people get out, vote from the abroad. It's easy. Number of women in the parliament, it went up. But unfortunately, the largest party has the lowest number of women members of parliament. So we have to tell them something. There are good news. The bad news, which perhaps are there, you talked about them, the polarization within the society, the way how the campaign was conducted. It was on negative sentiments, creating fears, bringing the agendas which are similar to US: economy, migration, war in Ukraine, and many others. And the twists were not positive, they were more on the negative side. Stop the immigration, stop funding NGOs. Those were billboards. I'm not campaigning. This is what I've seen in Slovakia when I was there in summer. And now perhaps we understand it's pre-election campaigning. Now it should be the time for action and more positivity. Let's wait, perhaps. There are some signs here and there, this way, that way. The most important thing for me is that a civic society, which Slovakia was really building from the first day in 1989, and it was coming from the Charta 77, from the Christian Democratic underground movement in Slovakia. This is really the guarantee of things of the fact that things cannot change bad dramatically quickly. If things can go wrong, they have to be like 8, 12, several years. But the civic society is strong. That's hugely important, and it helps to build trust in institutions. For 29 years, I'm a member of the deep state. So I don't know whether I'm a trustworthy person, but for me, the trust is the most important thing. If people lose trust, then the vacuum is there, and the vacuum is then filled by somebody who installs distrust. So what I would like to take away from this lecture is that there is added value of talking about election processes in Europe and here in US. Not because of the agendas. There is one item of agenda here in US which is different to Europe, and it's a violent crime, the gun crime. This is specific to US. But the rest is the same sort of question, the same sort of approaches, abuse or misuse of social media. And that there are lessons we can learn from each other in US and in Europe. I hope we did a small part of it. Thank you, Mr. Kuzel, for being here, Ms. Ručák, for your moderation. And well, I'm glad that this lecture happened. Well, let's keep the dialogue rolling. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Ambassador. Ďakujem pekne. Ambassador Staszak.
Oh, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. This is my second freedom speech since I arrived to the United States. And thank you, GMF, for hosting us. Thank you, American friends, of Czech Republic and Slovakia, Slovak Embassy, Czech Embassy to organize this, because this is already 23 years of tradition we are having. It was established in year 2000. But I will maybe start with what you said in the commemoration of the Karl Schwarzenberg, because he was a great promoter of democracy and human rights. He was my former boss as well. I had the opportunity to work with him. Unfortunately, we lost him week ago, and he was really a big player on the Czech political arena, and unfortunately he couldn't reach the top post, which is the head of the Czech state. It means he lost in the election in the final. But about the election process, I absolutely agree with Rostislav mentioned here, that we are already in the new era of elections with using the social media, because I think the great example is the presidential elections in the United States in 2016, because it's the election process is not anymore about the physical campaigning, but about basically using the social media, because you can reach much larger platform of voters, but also you can activate the part of the society which is anti the political system, or the people who never voted and participate on the process. And this is making for the prediction and predictability of the results of the voting much difficult time. I think with current era of using the modern technologies, of course, there are not any elections in US or Europe which are not facing of problem with cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns. And this is very hard to basically face that and to basically defeat it, yeah, because once the news is in the air, is spread, it is very difficult to always you are in the defense, yeah, and this is the advantage basically of the users of the social media, to play with the mood of the voters. We are having just a good example with the Ukraine. Of course, we were together with Slovaks, big hosting country of the Ukrainian migrants, and our government basically provide everything free for them. It means the accommodation, social system, education, etc. But you are having in our country the elements, they start playing with this, with the mood of the people, and specifically the moment that you have complicated economical situation, you have high inflation. It means the general living standard of living in the country is fragile. It means those activists basically playing with the mood of the people, and basically trying to move the people to the streets and to the squares of the cities, and to basically put in the point of the criticisms on the government, that look, the government is not taking care about our own citizens, but they are taking more about the foreigners and migrants coming to our country, and they are sharing with our social system and benefits we are having. But I think the major challenge we'll be having and we'll be facing for the election process is definitely artificial intelligence. And this is something new, which we must basically get used to live it. But I think what is very important in the future to find a good conduct, how to use the artificial intelligence, because it could be helpful, it could be dangerous on the other side, but always is depending how you use it and on which side you are standing. Thank God we don't have any elections now in Czech Republic. We had it, of course. We are in the middle of process of parliamentary elections. It means 2 years to go for the parliamentary elections. We just had it, the presidential elections. Of course, we are having ahead of us, all of us, big 2 elections next year, which will be the presidential elections in the United States and European elections in Europe, and both elections are having the potential definitely to change the global atmosphere and the relationship specifically between US and the European Union. And I hope that we'll be able to secure that the election will be fair without any major cyber accidents. And I think this is the main message, which means nowadays it's not the problem to organize elections, but to secure the whole process. And for us, for the Czechs, the last point I would like to mention The major challenge is to bring the correspondent voting, not in the Czech Republic, but abroad. Yeah, because specifically in the countries like United States, Canada, where there are huge destinations, you are having limited number of the diplomatic missions. It means it's really needed for huge communities as we are having, for instance, in US, to have better access and to give the opportunity to our people here in the United States also to participate in the election process. And I think our government made the promise, our president made the promise as well. I hope before this mandate of our current government will expire, that we'll be able to open this opportunity for our voters in the US as well. Thank you. And congratulations. It was a great lecture. Thank you. Thank you.
Děkuji. And to wrap us up today, the chair of American Friends of the Czech Republic, Tom Don.
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful lecture. You were provocative, and I think we all were able to taste what is our environment, both here as well as in Slovakia and the Czech Republic. Of course, I've been involved in the Czech Republic and Slovakia when I was president of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. And we went through these issues every single day. What is truth? What is fair? And what is free? And we're still at it, and we will be so probably for the rest of our lives, if way beyond. So a wonderful lecture. And another thing that struck me today was vocabulary. Yes, this is the freedom lecture, but what is freedom? Yes, it's about power. What is power? But there are some negative vocabulary words too that you deal with all the time, and we do as well as individuals here. Disinformation, that didn't exist when we were growing up. Illiberalism, that didn't exist when we were growing up. Ignorance did. Fear did. You brought up identities today. And that was something we were absorbing in our growth, but we really didn't label it. So all of these are relevant to who we are and what we are now. And I just want to thank you. It wasn't that I wasn't thinking before I came here, but now I've got even more to think about, and I appreciate it and look forward to, is it your paper or your book coming up?
It was a speech, basically.
Oh, well, actually, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for Friends of Slovakia and our partners and the two ambassadors. Good to see you sitting together. You know? Yeah. Masaryk used to say that the two divisions of Czechoslovakia were like twins. May it be so forever. Good.
Thank you.